Vincent wasn't exactly prepared to discover someone else in his bed, especially because his memory of the night before was extremely hazy. He had splintered fragments in his head. Lights, sounds, feelings. It was all sort of jammed together as if it had happened years ago, and he wasn't quite clear on the order of events anymore. His right shoulder hurt, that much was sure. He gave Karana a nudge for a moment and she stirred a little, but rather than wake up, she just rolled away from him and stole the sheets as she did. Vincent sighed and ran a hand through his hair for a moment, before looking around the floor of his bedroom. When he leaned down to pick up his clothes, he groaned hard and grimaced, before touching his shoulder tenderly. He'd been bitten. Hard, it seemed. Trying to ignore the pain, he ignored his clothes and stood up, wandering past the still sleeping Vernek to his bathroom. Stepping into the shower, he turned it on full blast, and gasped as the cold water hit his body. Shaking his whole body for a moment, the cold water helped him wake up, before it started to heat up. Then he began to wash off as he tried to get his thoughts straight. Clearly, he'd slept with Karana last night. Or done a lot more than sleep, but he couldn't really remember much. He thought it had been fun. Maybe? From what he could piece together, it was her idea. Not so much in words, but actions. What had made everything so hazy, though? Vera. He remembered the drinks she'd given him, the strange speech about the ciphers. That had to be it. She'd intended for him to be with her when the drug hit, but instead it had been a delayed reaction, and Karana wanted the same thing, so she likely thought he was just playing along. He turned off the shower once he was clean, and quickly dried off before walking back into the bedroom. The Xeno was fast asleep, so he didn't disturb her, pulling on his clothes and his jacket as he headed out the door. Just before he walked outside, however, he caught himself and walked back into the bedroom to find his holster. He found it empty under the bed, and after feeling around, he discovered the magnum under his pillow. That might have been his solution to having protection last night. Vincent wished he could remember clearly. He was about to move Karana and try to stink his memories, but then he remembered that he'd encrypted them. Plus, he needed to talk to Vera before he synced for the next unencrypted day. So, he holstered his magnum and adjusted his jacket before finally leaving. For the first time in weeks, he saw one of his neighbors as he walked down the hall. Laren was a very nervous Kreshner, a Xeno with a hard shell that made him think of a turtle. They were all apparently rather paranoid, which amused Vincent since they had hair that came up in tufts like mohawks. The Xeno nervously poked a few of his fingers together and spoke up as Vincent approached. You all right, Screech-88? I thought I heard some screaming last night. I called patrol, but they said not to worry. Yes. Nothing to worry about, Laren. Thanks for looking out for me. Hope I didn't keep you up. No, but... the Xeno was saying, but Vincent was already past. He didn't really have time to listen to Laren complain about the noises he was making last night. After calling the lift, he saw them shift around the opening and let him on. Without his mask, he was less intimidating, and he knew they were less afraid of him, but they still wanted to give him space because they knew what he did. The ride up to Sector 2 didn't take too long, and he was soon making his way to the patrol HQ. There seemed to be a greater than usual influx of citizens in the HQ trying to file complaints, or appearing for appointments with detectives. No one even bothered him as he quietly took a lift up to the top floor. The guards who were normally posted were absent, so no one bothered him as he opened the council chamber door and walked through to Vera's office. She was inside, sitting at the desk, most of the moving boxes untouched still from the day before. When she saw him enter, she looked confused and a bit surprised, so when he slammed his hands on her desk, she was entirely unprepared. You tried to drug me last night. What? He paused then, as he saw her obvious confusion, which was precisely when he remembered the drink Karana had given him, and then the candy after. Never mind, let's forget this happened. He straightened up and tried to make it out the door, but as he pulled on the handle, it wouldn't budge. You're not going anywhere until you explain what you're talking about, she said icily from behind him. Shit. Why had he come here and confronted her without thinking about it? Look, sorry, I'm rather messed up from last night. We had those drinks, and I was pretty sure you were trying to poison me. And then there was that weird speech about cipher or something. Then I went to meet the volunteers, but they were having a party, and they gave me something to drink. And then my night got crazy, and I woke up with someone in my bed, which I didn't expect. And then I thought about how weird I felt as I left your place and thought you were responsible. There was a mix of emotions that crossed Vera's face, and he noticed that she glanced away when he mentioned feeling weird when he left her place. He pointed at her then. Did you drug me? Drug is a very exaggerated word. It sounds like more things happened than I could account for. She only looked him in the eyes at the end of that. He wagged his finger at her then. So you did drug me. She got flustered then. It's not a drug. It's simply a traditional herbal powder enjoyed by dragons. It shouldn't have caused you to think you were poisoned, however. Nor should it have influenced your normal functions. What else happened to you? And why would you think I had poisoned you in the first place? I just revealed to you my private name. You're one of only 3 people to ever know it, and one of them is dead now. He stared and arched a brow, which caused her to continue. My father being one of them. Well, my memory is foggy as shit. I kind of remember being flipped upside down, and colors blurred together, and feelings, heat. It was like synth cranked up to the max. And then I was shot out of a cannon, I think. And as for the poison, well, you seem so different from the other Yervesh, and I couldn't figure out how you came to power. Plus, Mach told me not to trust you, and that got into my head. She examined him carefully for a moment. Mach? The counselor you guys appointed. She looked up at the ceiling for a moment and then back. Wait, can you describe him? A giant gold dragon? Now Vincent was confused. It was her turn to slam her hands on the table. Your counselor is the chief spymaster for the Draconic Senate? How did you guys not know that? You called me at his residence before. It's listed as the Union Center for Advanced Psychiatric Care and Treatment. It's got Union funding and is a place of higher education, with a list of references longer than my arm. You mean we've been sending people directly to the headquarters of the only unsanctioned spies in the Union who still operate openly? She dropped her head into her hands as Vincent stood there, unsure how to proceed. Oh, decades of privileged information being told to therapists and psychiatrists. Oh, they'll blame me for this. They'll kick me off the council. Well, don't tell them. Why would they blame you anyway? Because I was in counterintelligence. I'm supposed to find this sort of thing out. Well, now you did. It's a little late. She was clearly distraught and stressed. Just don't tell them. Slowly, she looked up from her hands. Don't tell them. Don't tell them. How many people have gone to this clinic? Anyone from the council? No. Lower-level detectives. Plus any patrol who needs help beyond our normal therapists. So the sorts of people with clearance that they could likely already get? Wouldn't they just be getting the personal perspective of cases and the like? What have they learned that they wouldn't get from reading the official case files? She looked off to the side as she thought it over, and then back up at Vincent. Just don't tell them. Just don't tell them. I'm sure he can read those low-level files anyway. Just make sure you don't send anyone important up there. Vincent shrugged. But we're sending you! She waved at him. Yeah, well, that ship has sailed. Latero didn't trust me with a whole lot of information. I had to get it from somewhere. Mox helped me a great deal these last few weeks. Week and a half? However long it's been. Vincent shrugged once more. She looked distressed still, but then he remembered the other issue and leaned forward, pointing at her again. Now, let's talk about you drugging me. Traditional remedy. She countered for a moment, but he kept staring her down until she finally caved. It's supposed to make dragons more... She waved a hand. Energetic. Vincent arched his brows in confusion. You tried to give me an energy drink? Why on... He'd wanted to say why on earth, but caught himself. Why would you want to hide that from me? She was quiet and looking away from him when things finally clicked in his head. Oh, the dress, the private name. Oh. Yes! She didn't look at him, but he could tell how flustered she was. Finally, she turned back. But why did you think I was going to poison you? Because you were acting weird and I could tell you wanted my memories encrypted. Plus, your father was working for the wardens and I thought maybe... Fuck! She was staring at him now, confused all over again. The wardens? She thought it over for a while. That ancient dragon death cult? What do... They're the ones who killed him? Are they behind the crime wave in the lower sectors? Why didn't you tell me all this? Because they've got their own spies. They've been watching my memories as well, and they're trying to groom me for something. I don't know who I can trust. Then you weirded me out with that speech about ciphers. He felt like the conversation was going in circles. So, you told the only dragon you know about the cult that's supposed to be run by dragons who want to take over the Union? I can trust him. But he's the... She sighed and began to rub her eyes. Could you sit down? Vincent sat in the chair in front of her desk. I think we may need to lay everything out. Let's start with why you even asked for a counselor after all this time. And be honest with me. I have no intention of telling the rest of the council, because I think you're right about there being spies. But I'm not convinced about who is sending them. She paused then, collecting herself before nodding at him. So talk. Vincent sighed and took the time to explain everything since he found the hand in the box. He told her about his talks with Mach, what he'd learned in his off time, what her father had told him through the recording, even about Brian and his mother in the lower sectors. All he left out was the memory editing station in the prison, and his conversation with the prisoners. That, and looking in on Mach's memories. Perhaps it wasn't the best idea. After all, she might still be playing him. But he didn't think so at this point. He'd have to go out on a limb and trust two people now. And then I woke up and came here. He shrugged. Kirana? She's the Vernac? Is she more your type? She seemed somewhat curious and somewhat worried as she asked that. You've got to be fucking kidding, Vera. After all I told you, that's your first question? He let out a groan. Everything else you were very clear about, and I had no avenue of questioning I needed to pursue. If we are to continue operating on the basis that we're friends, or more, I'd like an honest answer. I thought you were going to poison me. Last night had nothing with preferences or anything of the sort. I'm not even totally sure if she's my type. I was drugged out of my fucking skull. At some point I think I was about to start crying because she melted through the floor. Vera blinked at that, obviously confused. See? Drugged out of my skull. There's simply no way that could be the powdered flower I gave you. Dragons don't have any sort of reaction like that. Although you aren't a dragon. She paused, and then typed on her terminal for a moment. The wall behind Vincent flicked to life. Draconic Senate, Office of... a satyr began to say before Vera cut her off. This is Supreme Council Chair Kuina. Transfer me to him. I'm sorry, but Mr. K... I'm here with Creature 88. We need to talk about the new guest he picked up yesterday from the bottom of this city. I'll transfer you. They waited a moment before Mach came on the screen in one of his usual nice tailored suits. A most unexpected turn of events, Vincent. Is she coercing you? Should I expect a visit from the Warden forces any moment? No. She's not with the Wardens. I needed to come straight with her. Vincent replied, feeling a little sheepish suddenly, as he realized there might be some personal questions coming about how this all came to be. Why, may I ask, did you feel that? Mach asked as he arched a brow. Vincent thought it over and shrugged. It seemed like the right thing to do. I think she can help us. The right thing to do? Well, let us hope that is indeed the case, Karina. Mach nodded to Vera. Mr. Kane. she replied icily. Oh, so informal. But I hardly know you yet, Kuina. Well, seeing as our mutual friend calls you Mark, I thought I could drop your title into the simple form. Vincent suspected some sort of pissing match was going on, but he had no idea who was winning. So, your last name is Kane? Vincent asked to try to break the stalemate. Mark laughed. My formal name to title is Konrich Mark von Berestein Kaufblucken. Mark, I have to be out of this conversation by sometime next year. Vincent interrupted, as it sounded like the dragon was ready to go on. The dragon chuckled once more. So, what is this call regarding? I notice you're using the private line, and the council isn't in session. So I'm assuming you've just told her everything, and she hasn't told the council yet. That's correct. I have some issue with the management of the Union Center for Advanced Psychiatric Care and Treatment, it seems. But we'll discuss that later. It seems you have some concern over my mysterious history with my own people. I'll set that straight right now. I'm a cipher. As soon as she said that, Mock scoffed and lifted a hand. That's it? Why is such an organization even that secretive? Every other version of that sort of organization from other species is usually very open and proud. Which is precisely why the ciphers are needed, she said with a shake of her head. Vincent looked between them until Mock caught his confusion. They promote interspecies relationships as a method of advancing the species' ability to integrate and understand the rest of the Union. That and they love the builder puzzles, but I get the feeling that doesn't apply here. The dragon explained. Oh, of course you have no idea what the ciphers are, Vera said as she now understood Vincent's confusion better. Yeah, you guys seriously overestimate my knowledge of your cultures, Vincent said. But why? You've been here for a year. What have you been doing with your time? Vera replied as Vincent laughed. Dying? Doing detective work? It's not like I'm enrolled in classes with the local university or whatever. I pick up what I can where I can. Knowing about ciphers or wardens or the builders has had zero impact on my job. Until now. So, since you're a cipher, is that why the two of you are calling me now? You worked your way into his heart after a single night? Mock asked Vera. No, I was interrupted. Although indirectly, that's still why we're calling you. You had some powdered Yurma flour. Mock started to laugh, but Vera kept speaking. But he reported strange sensations, an influx of sensations he's unfamiliar with. How did you describe it, Vincent? I was drugged out of my fucking skull, flipped upside down, pulled inside out, colors and sounds and tastes merged together. And also, this happened, but I don't know if it's related. He pulled his jacket off and tugged his shirt down to show the bite marks on his shoulder. Mock leaned in close to the screen for a moment. Something bit you? Kirana, I'd imagine, Vera muttered icily behind him. Mock laughed then. The Vernac! Mock seemed to think it over a moment, before obviously remembering something. She was at the party, correct? The one they modeled after the Seder ceremony for Ascension. Did she give you a big purple drink? Not big. Like a normal tumbler size, Vincent said as he pulled his clothes back on. Mock started laughing even harder then. Oh, so often the plight of young dragons who fail to understand that chemistry can combine things in such interesting ways. If you take one of those or the other, then you'll have an interesting time, but nothing distressing. If you take them together, how well? Well, now you know. Then he paused and seemed to think it over. Wait, you've already recovered? Is she still alive? Well, she wasn't in a hurry to wake up, but she was alive when I left. Vincent frowned a little, wondering if he should have paid more attention to that suddenly. Mock laughed. Well, either you had a less potent batch than normal, or it's less effective on you than dragons. It's recommended to have significantly more than one partner Should a dragon get those two mixed? More in the sense that you don't want anyone collapsing from exhaustion. The dragon began laughing once more as Vincent looked back at Vera. And you gave me 2 glasses of that stuff? He asked as she looked flustered before replying. My research was only regarding the flower, and not the mixing of that with whatever's in the other drink, she insisted. Let me guess. Grain alcohol, juice of the bloody Niqua, and powdered Irma flour? Considering Vincent's weight, there's a good chance you'd have been the one sleeping in right now. You have to take into account how light he is compared to even a juvenile dragon. Mock said, still laughing as he obviously found the situation quite hilarious. Can we put all this behind us now? Vera stressed, even as Mock wasn't finished laughing. We need to figure out what to do about the wardens and all the spying going on. She glared at Mock as she said that. The dragon finally started to calm down and try to control himself once more. Speaking about stuff like that, thanks for setting up that facility for training the team, Mock. How secure is it anyway? Should I be concerned about fortifying those structures? Vincent tried to steer things back into a less personal and more business-oriented topic. Only if you don't pay your taxes, the dragon replied, and this time both he and Vera laughed, but Vincent glanced between them. I don't get it, he said flatly. What? You've not heard of the tax collectors either? Vera asked, obviously surprised. The tax collectors are the only union organization allowed to engage citizens offensively for a variety of purposes. Unless martial law is declared, of course. They're also the second best armed force in the Union after the Yervesh. Engage citizens offensively? Vincent asked. It's a bit complicated. I don't mean they'll randomly bomb an apartment if you don't pay your taxes. It has more to do with citizens who have large security forces, but have been trying to avoid paying taxes. They're controlled by a council of dragons who have pulled their own satyrs together. To be perfectly honest, the most egregious tax code violators are my own kind, so the forces are essential, Mock explained with a shrug. What color is their armor? It couldn't be so obvious, could it? Why, it's a tax collector's favorite color, of course. Gray. Mock laughed, but Vincent was thinking back on the satyr he'd seen near Little Odostov. I think the wardens are paying taxes on the black blood they're selling, he announced. What? Both Mock and Vera exclaimed at the same time. That satyr I saw in gray armor when I went to inspect the Ermani in Little Odostov. He was in my memories, right? You saw it, right? He looked at Vera, who nodded. It was gray armor, yes, but there were no overt markings to verify. You think they just used a basic form of the same gray armor? Why were you in Little Odostov anyway? She asked, which let him press on with his theory. I was there to find out more about it and the Ermani. I checked the crime statistics for the lower sectors. They were super high, but Mock says the AI thinks I've been lowering the crime rate. What if I was looking at the raw and adjusted data, and they pay taxes on all the crimes being committed, so the AI skews the final result to match? Or the other way around. Mock sees the normal data and I'm seeing the list with all the taxes paid, and thus all the crimes reported. He looked between the two of them, as he could see they were trying to process what he was saying. But the AI would report it, Vera finally said. To who? If the wardens are the tax collectors, then they're the ones monitoring all tax data. It's just a machine, a program. It's not a person who can make certain judgment calls, can it? It just takes in data and turns it into other data. I don't know. But you get what I'm saying. If the AI just thinks the current crime wave is associated with some change in policy, it's trying to figure out if the new law and new taxes are worth all the other costs. That way the AI doesn't flag all that other data to patrol and point out patterns. The wardens on the recording I found with Latero mentioned me being some sort of solution for an equation. What if that's what this is about? What if the AI comes to the conclusion that to balance out the new taxes with the new crime, it has to do something about me? The room was silent as they thought it over. How would they get around the fact that they're taxing crime? Mock asked. It's an AI we're dealing with. It deals in logic. What's more logical to a computer? That they're taxing crime and an entire organization it's being told to trust is corrupt? Or that there's some oversight in updating what should be considered illegal? You said the tax collectors can do things offensively. What if they're excusing some expenditures and actions as tax enforcement? He looked between the dragon and the Yervesh as they stared off into space for several seconds. Mach finally spoke again. The crime spree. The AI would obviously prioritize the increased tax income, which is likely extremely high, so it seems the increase in crime is an offsetting factor. Vincent comes along as a designated resource that has been proven to reduce crime. The AI eventually sets him up in some position with full disposal of Union resources and a single directive: reduce crime. Because he's listed as a resource, this overrides democratic selection processes, since the AI doesn't believe it's given so much power to a person. But I wouldn't do what they want. I wouldn't hand over control to the dragons and deny citizenship to the lower sectors, Vincent said. Vera was already shaking her head, having thought about that. What if they don't give you a choice? If they succeed in getting the lower sectors angry enough, they know we can't stop them all. There simply aren't enough Yervesh. If we pull them from some of the outer planets, they might rebel, or the worms might make them move. We'd have to conscript a new force, or authorize some sort of other response, which would require an emergency vote, and the lower sectors would obviously vote against it, not to mention concerned citizens who don't want our military and patrol to become indistinguishable. So, given the authority from the AI, you'd exclude them from the vote. Once the framework is in place, the wardens could step in and make it law. Mach finished as he rubbed his chin. This is very worrisome. I need to look into this immediately. How did you make this connection? Vera asked Vincent. A philosopher from my people several centuries ago said something to the effect of, the only sure thing in life are death and taxes. So, in general, I figure all crime comes down to one, the other, or both. I knew the Satyr were involved, and I knew there was no way the AI could miss this much on accident. You guys monitor and record everything, after all. Well, it seems we have a reason to work together, Vera said as she looked up at Mach. I don't know how long it will hold, but for the near future we must form an alliance. I agree. Our mutual friend here will keep us on the level with each other, I suspect. So long as you don't sleep with him, of course, Mach said with a bit of a smirk. I'll put that off until after this crisis is dealt with, Vera confirmed, as Vincent was left confused. I don't get a say in this. No. Now go wake up your date from last night and get to work with your team. The preacher is key. He's the one who's able to whip the lower sectors into a frenzy. You get him, you stop, or at least delay them. Vincent looked up at Mach, who shrugged. It will take me time to look into this. I'm sorry, but finding the secret base where Brian was stored will have to wait. The sooner this is handled, the sooner the search can continue. Vincent sighed, but nodded, before stepping up and walking to the door. Well, now they had a much better idea what the possible warden plan was, but he'd also made things possibly awkward between him and Vera. Plus, he had to find out what Kirana remembered from last night, and he still wanted to know why the fuck she tried to take a bite out of his shoulder.